What's going on, guys? Alex here, back for another video. And in this one, we are going to go over the follow-up script. All right, so this is going to be specifically for those of you who are already making prospecting calls, whether you're calling expireds, FSBOs, for rent by owners. The next step after that call is to get good at your follow-up calls. All right, and I've said in previous videos, it's actually more difficult, at least it was for me. I can only speak from my own experience. It was more difficult for me to make follow-up calls than it was to make prospecting calls. Eventually you get over the hump of making the prospecting calls and you get the hang of that. But what do you say next after you send them options? You send them an email, right, with an attachment of what you do. And so that's what I do, and I'll tell you why I do that. But what do you say in the follow-up call? When do you follow up, right? So these are problems that I had when I first started doing this, and hopefully this video is going to be helpful. Not hopefully, this will be helpful. All right, so the first thing I do when I call someone, first of all, I have follow-up days. All right, so every Tuesday and Thursdays is when I schedule my follow-up calls. All right, so that's the first thing. Now it's time to make my follow-up call. Let's say I spoke to an expired, I sent them an email, and now it's Tuesday, and it's time for me to follow up because they haven't gotten back to me, right? Usually I have to follow up with them. They don't follow up with me. All right, so if you're not following up with your prospects, with your leads, you're basically prospecting for no reason. Don't even do it. And I'm serious about that. If you're not going to follow up, then you're just wasting your time. All right, I hope I make that clear. So it's Tuesday. We're now getting ready to make a follow-up call. They pick up. First thing I say is, hey, Mr. Seller, this is Alex. Not sure if you recall, we spoke the other week regarding your property at Vermont Street. Is now a good time? And hopefully they remember who I am. Most times they do it, and I say, great. Well, I was just following up to see if you had time to review the attachments that I had sent the other week. All right, and most times they'll say yes. But here's the reason why I like sending an email. It gives me a reason to follow up with them. You always want a reason to follow up with someone. So the fact that I sent them something via email, now I can go ahead and it's perfectly legitimate for me to give them a call, take time out of their day because we already had a conversation about this. I sent you some more information, and now I'm just following up to see if you had time to review that. Is that fair, right? Sorry, my computer just shut off. Hopefully this is still going. Okay. All right, so that's the first thing. All right, so make sure that, get my arrow here. There we go. Make sure that you're sending them something. Again, this is how I do it. All right, I can only speak for myself, but that's the first question I ask, and most of the times they have, right? Because I only follow up with people who are prospects. That's another key. Be sure you're watching. Every Wednesday I do a not every other Wednesday now I do a call analyzed, right? So I basically go over a call and I determine whether this is a prospect or a suspect, why that is, and when I'm going to follow up with them next. If it's a suspect, I'm not going to follow up with them. I might send them a form letter so that they can get back to me when they're ready, if they're ever going to be ready. But if they're a prospect, then I follow up with them. Okay, so that's an important distinction as well. So long story short, this is the first question I asked, just seeing if you had time to review the attachments that I had sent the other day. All right. And then if there's a long pause, they say, yeah, I did. And if there's like a long pause, then I'm going to follow up with this question. Great. Well, do you think this might be a good option for you? Or a lot of times they'll just go ahead into the conversation. Yeah, I looked at it and here's some questions that I had. All right. So here's what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to prepare for the most common objections. And I did a video specifically on the 3 most common objections that you're going to receive for sellers when you're wholesaling lease options. Again, my strategy at this time in my investment career specifically is wholesaling lease options. All right, it's not sandwich lease options, and it's not anything else. It's basically wholesaling lease options. So that's what my videos pertain to at this time. All right, so you want to be prepared. I did a video on that. I'll put the link into the description so that you can find that easily. It's a public video. And be prepared because they're going to ask you at least one, if not all 3 of these common questions. All right, so that's another key. Make sure you're prepared for those. Now, what did I just do? Now, the next step. Now, on the first call, usually I don't get into the mortgage info, right? A lot of times sellers might see that as intrusive. All I'm doing is just seeing if getting information, determining if they're a prospect, and I don't always get the mortgage info. Most times I don't, I'll be honest. But that's what the follow-up call is for. There's really no rush. There's no need to be in a rush to get this info, I usually get it on the follow-up call. So what I usually do, great. Well, as long as those numbers might make sense, it usually determines on the current financing. So it usually determines if there's not any current financing. This is me talking to the seller. So that's what I say to lead into the mortgage info. I say, great. Well, how we would determine the numbers more accurately would determine if there's any current financing on it. So can I ask, is there currently a mortgage on it? Right? You can do it that way. And that's how I obtain the mortgage info every time. I never get any hassle on the mortgage info. If it's free and clear, then obviously there's no payment on it. But most times, most mortgages, probably 2/3 of the time, there will be a mortgage. So following up from the mortgage info, if they have a mortgage on it, I ask, okay, well, can you tell me what the payment on that is roughly? Can you tell me the payment on it roughly? Right? I usually don't get any objections to that. So when they tell me the payment, I want to be sure that includes the it's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance all in one payment. And the next question is very important as well. You don't want to forget this question. This is an important question here. And I'm guilty of this myself. You want to ask if the payments are still current, right? You want to make sure they're not behind. Because if they're behind, that's going to change your strategy for reasons I'm not going to explain in this video. But you want to make sure that they're current on all their payments and that they're not behind. That's important. And then the last question is you want to find out how much is owed on it, right? Generally speaking, all I need to know is if they have equity. Are they expecting equity, or are they expecting no equity or little equity, right? I want to get an idea as far as whether they're expecting a cash out somewhere down the line, which most are. All right, and that's really all I care about with this strategy. These are this is the you need to get the mortgage info. That's what I want to stress to you. All right, make sure you have the mortgage. If you didn't get it on the first call, which most times you probably won't, from my experience, but you need to get it on the second call. All right. Hope that makes sense. Now that you have the now that you have a seller who's interested, right? If you gotten to this point, then most likely they're interested in what you have to offer. And obviously they reviewed. You explain the options to them. If they prefer option 1 or option 2 more. You went over the common objections or whatever questions that they came up with. You've answered them for them. You've gotten their loan info, and now you want to book an appointment to go view the home. All right. So you want to schedule a good day and time for the both of you. My best times, I like to go early afternoon when it's daytime, not when it's nighttime, because that way I can get a good feel for the area. The house shows better. I just like doing it in the afternoon. All right, that's just me. If you don't have time to do it in the afternoon, because you work a 9-to-5 job, maybe do it on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon. Or if that doesn't work for you, then do it in the evening. It doesn't really make a big difference. But book an appointment to go see the house. All you really want to do is verify the condition of it. I'm not going to go into that. I keep going ahead of myself. I'm not going to go into that in this video. One topic I wanted to bring up is whether you should do this virtually or non-virtually. All right, meaning, do you have to actually go physically see the house? Now, technically, the answer is no. You don't really need to see the house because you're not the one who's going to be staying in the middle, right? You're not the one that's going to be owning it or even controlling it during the term. You're basically going to find a buyer, assign them back over to the seller, and then you have a general lease that basically takes you out of the deal, right? And it's no longer your responsibility. So you don't need to see the house technically, but especially if you're a novice at this, which I consider myself a novice at this, I'm going to go ahead and see the house every time. I'm going to meet with the seller every time. Why? There's a few reasons why. First off, it builds a comfort level now that they met me in person, all right? So I'll definitely get way more contracts by meeting a seller in person than not meeting with them in person. And this is probably a topic I'll do another video on, but I'll hit on this one in this video because I think this is important. So that's the first reason. You definitely want to see the house because you'll get more contracts, right? You'll convert more appointments into contracts. Another reason is if you see yourself long-term staying in the middle of some of these deals, like doing a sandwich lease option, doing owner financing, subject to, staying in the middle, then you're going to want to get used to meeting sellers in person because with that strategy, you definitely, either yourself or someone who's on your team needs to go out and see that property and meet with that seller, all right? No exceptions, my opinion, because I'm not going to get into reasons for that, but you definitely want to eventually get to the point where you want to build passive income for yourself, right? You don't always want to just wholesale it, and be a wholesaler full-time. My opinion, of course, that's just an opinion, but because you're not building any freedom, you're not building any cash flow, right? You're basically, you have a job, all right? It's always going to be a job for you. A well-paying job, but it's always going to be a job at the end of the day. So you might as well view the properties. And eventually, if you're gonna stay in the middle of some of these deals, you're going to have to see the properties in person either way. So why not get the practice out of the way, right? Not only are you going to convert more appointments into contracts, but you're also going to get good practice meeting with sellers, right? Because you're going to have to do that when you're staying in the middle. Those two reasons alone, I think it's well worth taking the drive, making the drive. Sometimes I drive an hour and a half, even 2 hours at times to go see a property just to get a contract. But again, it's worth it. It's worth it at the end of the day. I say go out, meet the seller, especially if you're new. Especially if you're new, 100% go meet with the seller. Don't do it virtually. Overcome that challenge. This is another challenge. All right, it's another challenge to meet with a seller face to face. Right, it takes more courage to meet with them face to face than follow-up calls, then prospecting calls. It's the next phase of your evolution within the strategy. All right, so I hope I hit that point. All right, so then you book your appointment. Now it's time to research comps and prepare for the appointment for whenever you book it, right? So that's really it. This is the follow-up call script. It's a really simple script, as you can see. This is what I do in each call. What I'm going to do is post live follow-up calls. All right, so you know how every other Friday I post live calls, whether sometimes lately they've been expireds. In the past, I've done for rent by owners. I've done for sale by owners. Now we're going to include some follow-up calls. For those of you who have been taking action and actually making some prospecting calls, these calls are going to be super insightful, super helpful for you. And I look forward to sharing some of these calls with you. Okay, so that's it for this video, guys. I hope this was helpful. I know if I had seen this when I was earlier on in my journey, I definitely would have appreciated this video and the future follow-up calls that I'm going to be posting. So be sure to look out for those. Again, that's every other Friday. I'll post some calls. Per usual, guys. Appreciate you guys for watching and look out for future videos.